All right, I'm here with my buddy Cowboy, and this is Cowboy's Roadmap to Success. Now, Cowboy is a great dog, but he has some issues about, I think he's on edge. I think the biggest issue that he has is, you see those ears. I mean, those could not be pulled back any further. And that's what, when they're more up, that's what we should be seeing. So I think that because moving to this new environment, I just learned there's a fire station at the end of the block. There's a busy intersection here. The walls are pretty thin, and there's a lot of people going around. So there's a lot of things that are uncomfortable for him. And just like us, I don't know about you, but when I get uncomfortable, I get a little bit frustrated. I get kind of snippy or nippy. I don't nip, but I'm not as relaxed as I normally would be. So I think that those are all contributing factors for him. And we talked about, there's been a couple of situations where he's nipped a couple people. But I think from talking to them, there's either too much exercise or excitement, too much energy. And so the Guardians now, you kind of understand what to look for. All right, so what did we cover today? First thing we went over was marker words. Now the Guardians used to be using good boy. I don't like saying good boy because we often say good boy when the dog's not doing anything new. The marker word needs to come within 2 seconds of him doing something new. So if he's sitting on the couch, you're like, Cowboy, you're such a good boy. It just waters down and dilutes it. Remember, when you say yes, don't say yes. Don't say it with, don't hold your on, yeah, don't go yes. Also, to go yes, just say yes. And then give him a pet or a treat. When you say yes, don't say any other words for 5 seconds. Now, you didn't do it, but a couple of sessions, the male counterpart here has said the old marker word a couple times. It's the way your brain is set up. It's going to take you a little bit of time to get used to it. So if you say, good boy, yes. Just immediately, once you recognize it, say it afterwards. But after a while, it'll start falling off. But just say yes one time and don't say anything else. Yes. All right. We also went over hand targeting. He already knows hand targeting, but remember the 4 components to teaching a cue, which we used to call a command word. There is the cue, sit. There's the action, the dog sitting, that's number 2. There's me saying the marker word, yes, which tells him he did what I wanted, that's number 3, and then he gets the treat, number 4. But when we're teaching a dog, we actually do the first step last. We don't say the cue until it's easy to lure the dog into that position. And I'm 90% certain when I lure him into position, he does what we want. Now, if I push him off or say no, I'm giving attention, so I could go, yes. So I'm giving him something else to do instead of pushing him off or giving him attention. Remember, all attention is rewarding. All right, so for the cue, we lure the dog. If I'm luring a sit, I would, yes. And I would do that 5 or 6 times until it's really easy to lure him. And then I would say, sit, yes. So when you do the cue, you're just going to sneak the cue in before the action. So before you throw the ball and say fetch, then you would throw the ball. So always the cue comes first. Now, you can also use motion to get your dog's attention. Yes. And remember, when I do hand targeting, I always want the dog to start and stop my hand. You saw he touched my hand and looked elsewhere. And that's how a lot of people teach is they go, touch, yes, and they give him a treat. It's right down there, right there. What I like to do is touch, yes, and I put the treat there. So he starts and stops on my hand, he stays at my hand, as opposed to touching it, looking for the next adventure. All right, so that's how to do cues. We also talked about what I like to call the celebration game. So yes, that's celebrating. I didn't ask him to sit, but I do find sitting desirable. So I don't find jumping up on me or biting me or barking or stealing or humping or any of those things desirable. But for dogs, all attention is rewarding. So when he chooses to do things that you like, I want you to make sure you say your marker word and pet him. And if your partner misses it, your partner's going to say celebrate, and then you just say yes and pet him under his chin. You don't even know what it is. But I want you to be mindful of it. So if you start seeing him coming up to you, yes, when he arrives, or he sits down or whatever it is, going to the dog bed, eye contact, leaving the room, whatever it is, yes. And after a while, we have thousands of puppies today in our puppy classes who will sit in front of you, and if you don't start petting them, they will resit and resit and resit, because sitting is the thing that works most consistently. Most of us say, no, don't jump up, and that's why the dog jumps up, because I get a lot of attention. But if you're consistently rewarding for the things that you like, he's going to do them more often, and it makes him feel more relaxed as he knows what it is that you want. Now, celebrating is one side of the game. The other one is what I call manners. And so if he jumps up on me and I pet him, whatever he's doing right before I pet him is what I'm specifically rewarding him for. So if he jumps up on me, I pet him, I'm saying jumping up on me is a great way to get my attention. So if he jumps up, let's do now I'm going to lure him into an up. Let's see, will you do an up? Will you come up here? It's like, no, I only do it when I want to do it. And that's fine. So when he does it, remember, this is the do-over concept. So if he jumps up, you're going to just tell him to sit or down one time. If he does it, then you say your marker word and reward him. If he doesn't do it, you just go back to doing what you're doing. Remember, playing hard to get works great for dating, works great for dog training too. And then if he starts whining and whimpering, ignore that. And wait for like 5 or 10 seconds without whimpering, and then ask him to sit or down or whatever it is, and mark that if he does it. And so let's say he jumps up, I say sit, he sits, I say yes, and pet him a little bit, and I go back to what I'm doing, and he jumps up again. He might be saying, I'm too bored. I need something to do. And so you're here, why don't you entertain me? And so if you celebrate, or if you do the manners lesson, yes, multiple times in a row, he's coming back to you. He's probably saying, I need some exercise, which we'll talk about in a second. So celebrate is what you're going to say to each other. If he does something that you find desirable that you want to reward. Manners is what you say to each other if you think that the person forgot to ask him to sit or lay down or do something before you pet. It's just teaching him that jumping is not the appropriate way to ask for attention. All right, so get in a habit of doing it. It'll take you guys about 3 months to get in a habit of it. Once you do, I just noticed the cat. Once you do, every time you pet your dog, it becomes a micro training session, either rewarding what he does that you like when he does on his own, back to me, that's awesome. Or you're directing him, just like you tell a little kid, would you like to ask for that again? Could I please have X, Y, or Z? Yes. All right, now we also talked about exercise here as well as during the session. He's probably not getting as much exercise as he needs. And most of us don't have enough time to exercise their dogs. So we went through some creative exercise hacks, like feeding him out of a snuffle mat, using an Omega Paw tricky treat ball. I would use they have a Kong feeder, and I would use that as well. And he used a different one for each meal. Now, right now, he is free-fed. He doesn't have any food here because I asked the guardians to pick it up. When we leave food in the bowl all the time, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you have a dog with a guarding problem, I don't want to leave something a dog might potentially guard out, especially when we're going to have guests come over. Also, it's healthier psychologically for dogs who are fearful or reactive or insecure. That's great. To have more rules and structure. So if you're the provider of food, that helps them feel better. So what I would do is go over and put the food in the bowl. Again, I'd probably ask him to sit first, then put the food in the bowl. And then basically you eat a couple chips or cracker because he's a social eater. And then when you get done, you invite him over and come up with a word. One of my dog's words is lasagna. So maybe say meatball, pork chop, and he runs over and eats his food. So it's a fun little cue. I'm talking about that in a sec. So let's say he comes over and sniffs. He goes, I eat when I feel like it. I'm not going to eat now. I'm going to eat later. And he leaves the room. I pick up this bowl. I dump the food empty when he's not there. And then I put the empty bowl back down. So he sees that bowl is empty every time I come and get water. Then when there's food in it, holy cow, there's food. It's a special, unique time. I would like to feed him 3 times a day, but at least twice a day. And it'll probably take a day or 2 before he actually starts eating. Hunger is your ally, so do not cheat, and don't doctor his food. Just put the regular food in there. Remember to get pick a brand and then get a different flavor of food each time. Something else I was going to go over, I've forgotten. It'll come back to me though. All right, so eventually you get to the point where he's eating out of the bowl consistently. Then you can switch him over to a snuffle mat or try to do that, and start feeding him out of the treat dispensing toys, a different toy each time. Now be careful if you have guests over. I wouldn't feed him with guests out because that could very easily become a guarding situation. I would have the guest go for a walk or feed him in your bedroom or something along those lines. Okay, so there's other forms of exercise. If I had something, I could play tug of war. That's a nice way to burn energy. But just remember, no matter what the activity is, once he gets to 50% of his energy range, we're going to stop the activity, even if he's having a good time. Mistakes happen when they get overstimulated. So having him practice not going over 50% of his energy range is really helpful. And so, touch. Yes, that is something I did, something else I wanted to go over earlier. So right there, he had jumped up, his guardian wanted to get him down. So we teach a lesson called the pause interrupter. So let's say that he's over there farting around and he's getting the trash. I go, which the guardian's already here to do. I make that kissing sound. Then when he looks at me, I go, touch. And he runs over away from getting in the trash or the shoe or whatever it is. I give him the reward, and at that point, I'm going to give him a collagen stick, a bully stick, a cow kneecap, a lick mat, whatever it is, and give him something else to do. Otherwise, he's going to go back to doing what he was doing before. So this is what I do instead of saying no, is I use the pause interrupter. Sit? Yes. All right, so let me see. What other forms of exercise? You can play, they use a flirt pole. That's fine. Again, 50%. We stop. And then ask him for some sits, some downs. If he can't sit or down, he's too excited. Maybe walk a little bit, wait, and then ask a couple steps, ask for a sit. When he can sit, then we're getting close to the time where I can resume the flirt pole. But a lot of times with high energy dog, we get them more and more worked up, and we wonder why they have difficulty listening. We have the same thing if we get too jacked up on Mountain Dew. We can't listen. Same sort of thing for him. Touch? Yes. Okay, so we can also give him a harness with the doggy backpack. It's got a couple of bags, little compartments here. You can put bags of water, bottles of water, bags of sand, or whatever it is. It makes the walk more efficient. You don't want to do that if your dog has mobility issues, but I don't think he has any issues like that, so it's fine for him. So that's physical exercise. There's also mental stimulation. Sometimes there's hybrids. Sit down. Yes. So a hybrid would be like a sniff walk. Letting your dog sniff on a walk burns almost twice as much energy than not sniffing on a walk. When you're walking, instead of walking around the block, just take a right or left when you leave your door, and then walk for, if you have 17 minutes, well, that's like 8 minutes this way and 7 minutes that way. And so, or 8 minutes, so what I do is I just take a right or left out the door, go for like, let's say 10 minutes, I go 10 minutes, and then I cross the street for my next 10 minutes on the way back, so he has fresh sniffs. So instead of trying to complete a circuit going around a block and hurrying him along, we're just going until our buzzer goes. And it really helps the dog feel more relaxed. Also, the more he's sniffing the ground, the less he's looking for the boogeyman. Now, there's other things that we can do. There's mental stimulation. Training is a wonderful way to burn energy. So even if you just grab some treats and just do some, what's his word to down?
Down.
Down. Down. Yes. Up. Yes. Touch. Yes. And just come up with a cycle of 5 or 6 things, and then take a couple steps and repeat that again. And so that's a nice way to drain some energy, just some basic obedience. Remember, training should be less than 3 minutes each training session, and always end on a good repetition. And if something's going to happen that's going to cause him to stop performing, end the lesson before. Let's say a partner's somebody come through the door and I'm working on stay. I'm going to release him from that stay first so that he doesn't get distracted when he comes through the door. Yes, you really want that treat, huh? Touch? Yes. All right. So there's also, we went over cookie in the corner, and I'll have that linked above. I should, but throw 1 and work up to throwing 5 and say here every time he comes back to you. And then I would like you guys to Google scent games. Look for some creative ways to exercise him with scent work. Find 3 or 4 different things, whether it's cups or hiding or whatever it is, and help him feel good and comfortable about that. And that's a nice way to burn some energy without you having to get the exercise yourself. And then there's, I've already mentioned the snuffle mat, and one thing I forgot to go over is the lick mat. Lick mats, do you have any lick mats? I would have those out when we have a couple relatives are coming to stay. I would get him used to those with cream cheese or peanut butter and load that whole sucker up. And do 1 or 2 before they get here. Then start freezing them. So the freezing makes it last longer. You can also use a column filled with peanut butter. So now we can start pulling that out when the guests are here. Put it over there. He's over there licking it while you're entertaining your guest here. And so he's got a couple feet away. Also, one other thing to be careful of is there was a little bit of a dust up about me moving towards the kennel. So obviously, the kennel won't be here when your guests are here. But be mindful of choke points. If I'm sitting like here and he's over here and the only exit is on this side of the room, I might be creating a little tension because he's like, I got to walk by David to go out, and now I don't trust him for whatever reason. So if you can, try to have your guests sit on the inside of the room and you sit on the outside so you're not creating a choke point. All right, so let me see. For other things you can do for mental stimulation, the flirt pole, I guess the flirt pole is more of a physical exercise. Yes. Oh, that was a double yes. So I first celebrated for him coming, then for him sitting down. So the idea for exercise is to come up with, and mental stimulation is come up with a rhythm where we can do this realistically, where we're maybe exercising him or mental stimulation or training every 2 to 3 hours. And when guests are here, I would say every 90 minutes to every 2 hours, we're going to give him a little bit of a break. All right, we also went over dog body language and cutoff signals. So the cutoff signals I'll probably have linked above, but the dog body language is one that I want to go over how to work on. So dogs are really wiggly and jiggly. You see his body is not very tense. His tail's moving, he's looking around. So he's relaxed. Then I look at his ears. This is probably more normal, how they should be. And I want to identify these things when he's in a neutral state of mind. How do his eyes look? He has kind of some big eyes, but are they big and unstaring? Is he blinking? If he's blinking, that's more like, see, if they're unblinking and dilated pupils, that's a big warning. Is he drinking in, breathing really heavily, or is he holding his breath? Are his ears forward or back? So I learned that's what I do for the head. Then I look at the tail. Is the tail going up, holding straight, or quivering? Those are kind of flying the flag, a little bit more alert. Is it swinging in the middle? This is what we'd like to see, swing in the middle or a little bit lower. Or is it tucked or phallically coming up? If those are the case, then we don't want to have him anybody interacting with him when he's showing signs he's uncomfortable. Also, if he's leaning towards something or away from something, especially if he's leaning, like coming towards somebody like this, he's not comfortable. Now, as a guest, one of the things you tell your guests is, you know what? Until he's approached you like 4 times, I don't want you to pet him. So if he comes up to you, and sometimes it's helpful to have friends come over that will listen. So if he comes up to you, and when he came up to me, he was giving me all kinds of sniffs. What did I not do? I did not pet him. I didn't move. Being passive and letting the dog sniff you without trying to pet them, and most people think of petting is how we make friends. He's not sure if he wants to be friends yet. So I'm just going to hold still and let him get his sniffs in and let him feel comfortable and move away. And then he does that 3 or 4 times. Now I would offer my hand out and see if he's interested. If he touches his nose to my hand, then tell your guest he likes it on his chin or on his chest. Then they reach over to pet him. Hey, buddy. Yeah. And then if he turns his head away, he's saying no. And so remember, watch for those cutoff signals, not just with your guests, though, with you guys as well. So the more that we recognize that he's uncomfortable and stop the thing or move him away from the thing, the less he needs to react. Let me see, the video above on counter conditioning, I'm not going to talk about too much, but what I'd like to see you guys do is make that list of all the things, and then have to record the trash truck down the street. So remember, go down, watch him. Have one of you guys outside when the trash truck is down the street, and then as soon as the person in here sees his ears flip back, you tell the other person, they're like, okay, trash truck is 7 houses away. So that's where you start, I would start the audio recording for that and start practicing that. So instead of running away from these things, we're going to help him see these things are good, positive things instead of negatives. And I think just because of the location and the thin walls and all the sounds, that's going to be really helpful. Now, yes, buddy. And so when we're doing that, make sure that's like 1 to 2 minutes each time, maximum. I call that like riding the roller coaster. If you're on a roller coaster, you're sitting on your butt, but it drains a lot of energy. So this drains a lot of energy from him. So if you're doing those sort of things, keep it short and always end on a success so he remembers, yeah, I heard the siren, I got a treat. Now remember, you can, I guess I'm talking about stuff in the video above, so I'll leave that compartmentalized there. The one thing I do want to give you is the frequency of practice. About 80 reps, I was just reading a book where it talks about 80 reps in one day is probably the maximum number of reps that you can do in any one exercise in a day. And that's like in the perfect scenario, everything's going well. It's really how he's reacting to it. So if he starts getting stiff or still or licking his lips or he's feeling uncomfortable, stop it on a good rep, and then next time don't do it quite as long. We want to find whatever amount he's comfortable doing without overdoing it and making it too taxing. Also, dog training is not a linear process, it's not a bell curve. Sometimes it's just going to go, oop. That's okay. So when that happens, just kind of ask yourself, how can I make it a little bit easier? And then practice a little bit less. Some dogs, you might be able to practice the sound sensitivity 5 different times a day at 1 minute each practice round. Another dog, once a day might be too much for them. So the idea, remember, he just can't react when we're doing that stuff. All right, let me see. We also talked about the importance of rules and structure. So just having some rules. So having him sit before I let him out of the kennel. Sit before I prepare the food. Sit before I open the door. Before I put your harness on or your leash on or whatever it is. Now, if I want to stay seated in the kennel, so let's say the kennel's right here. I walk up to her and he gets up. I tell him to sit. If he sits within 2 seconds, if the kennel door is here, I would reach my hand this much, pull back, and then say yes and give him a treat. So I do that about 3 or 4 times, just reaching this far. Next time I'm gonna reach a little bit further, pull back, yes, and give him a treat. So we're breaking down the activity into small, bite-sized steps, and we're practicing step number 1 over and over and over until he's comfortable. Only then do we do step 2, and then step 3. And eventually you do all the steps together, and then you start doing the steps where you have a guest here, or whatever it is that you need to do to make it more realistic. So for the door, I would just keep on reaching until eventually I can touch the door. Then I would jiggle it lightly, and if he stays seated, I say yes, give him a treat. Then I'm jiggling it a little more. Yes, give him a treat. You're being silly. Eventually I unlatch it and open 1 inch and close it and latch it, and then say yes and give him a treat. And he's got to stay in a sit for the whole time. Eventually it gets to the point we go and open the door, open it all the way, and he's like, what? Then you show him you have a treat, and you come up with a word that means to exit the kennel. And I would have the word mean that and that alone. So maybe free or freedom or whatever. You say freedom and throw the treat outside. He runs out to get it. And so that becomes your exit cue. So eventually, if you do this right, you can come home, go open the door to the kennel. He's in the kennel, and you go wash your hands. In the middle of washing your hands, you yell release or whatever the word is, and then he runs out of the kennel. But he's practicing restraining himself. Remember, self-restraint is really important for dogs. Sit. Yeah. All right, the last little part about this is about your guests. So when you have guests come over, again, make sure that he gets about every 90 minutes to 2 hours, about a half an hour break away from the guests. Taking him outside for a sniff walk is a nice thing because it lets him drain some energy. You can exercise him before your guests come over, but don't overdo it. An overly tired dog is more likely to be reactive than just an adequately exercised dog. So you might kind of voir dire it a little bit. Maybe take him out for a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk, see how he does better, and kind of figure out the appropriate length of the walk. And then, let me see, for the last little thing is the first thing I did. When I met him, I was meeting him outside. When we come into a dog's house, we're invading their space, and we forget that dogs can't open the door and leave themselves when they want to go. Even though there's a lot of extra house, dogs don't really see it that way. So what I would do is I would do the treat trail. So I had treats right from the front porch right out here, coming down the sidewalk, and there's a tree over here that blocks him from seeing whoever's there when he comes out the door. So make sure the person's sitting there. So I would do the treat trail. And at first I have the treats about every 6 inches apart, then about every foot, and about every 1.5 feet. And as he gets better at this, you can make them bigger. We don't give him too many treats. And tear the treats in half if you need to, or quarters. And then eventually he gets over there and there's a small pile of treats in the place where the person will be sitting. Maybe the next time you're sitting there and you're the one doing the exercise. So it's like, oh my, this is my favorite people. This is where you guys hang out. And eventually then you get to the point when we have a guest come over, the guest is there. But he's already practiced getting these treat trails. He's already practiced enjoying this activity. And then the guest has some treats. Now, when the guest stands up, that's a kind of a transition. So if you remember when I did it, I had you call him away. You could have the guest just throw 3 or 4 treats away. I forgot about Cookie in the corner. That's a residual from Cookie in the corner, so that should be linked above. So basically, if I want to stand up, I'm going to throw the treats over there. Then I stand up. When I stand up when he's right here, that can cause a little bit of, ooh, you're getting serious now. So then when he comes back over to me, I'm standing and I ask for a sit. Yes. And I wouldn't, point of fact, I wouldn't actually have the person get up until the person can sit. He will sit when the person says that. If not, you just free treat or throw treats. The friend can do the find it in the lawn out there. But if he comes up to sniff, make sure you tell the people just hold still. Don't talk to him. Just let him sniff you as much as he wants. And then we don't want to have the person get up until I can ask him to sit. He sits. Then I throw a couple treats away. He's getting good at that. And then I stand up. He comes back to me. I give him another treat. And then you go for maybe a little mini walk. Maybe just go the next block and turn around, come back, or walk around the block, whatever you want to do. So we end it with some motion. And then when we come in the house, right before the door, ask him to sit, give him a treat. As soon as the guest does. As soon as he walks in the door, tell him to sit, give him a treat before you even close the door. And then have your guests sit down. Tell your guests not to move stuff around too much. If the kennel's here, tell them, hey, let's stay away from that side of the room. And so that's a nice greeting that you can set up so that way he likes it when people come over because he's going to them. And if you're doing this and he doesn't want to go to the person, he's saying, I'm uncomfortable about that. That tells you if we go inside, it should be pretty short and we need to work on this relationship. And you can have the person, there's another game that you can do that I like to do. It's a simple orientation game. We'll do this here real quick and then we'll wrap this video up. All right. So what we're going to do is, how far, if you can put the camera edge so the edge of it is right here. There we go. So I'm going to just say, there we go. Let me get torn up first. I got to tear these up. You do it too quick. You're fast. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a treat behind him. Get him over there. When he looks at me, yes. When he looks at me, yes. 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 So I'm throwing the treats to the side. Now this is kind of an awkward place to do it. You can do this outside. So as a dog, I look at you, yes, and you throw a treat there. I go get it, I look at you, yes, and you throw the treat here. I don't have to come to you, but I get to play a game where you're the driver of the game, and I'm getting, what is the reward for looking at you? But do I have to come to you? No. I look at you, throw a treat over there, and I go find it, and I look, and I'm using my nose. So it's a nice orientation game. So if he gets a little stiff or still, that's a nice way for the guest to interact with him, and the guest can move the treats behind him. And if they ever need to, tell the guest, throw it over his head, throw it past him. So a lot of the time, we only put the treats in between us and the dog when they get the dog closer. Dog really doesn't want to be there, and it gets closer and run out of treats, it might bite you. So if I'm doing that, I might do that a little bit, but every once in a while I'm gonna throw a treat way over there. When the dog runs away, he's like, you can take a breath. And then he'd come back and do that. And again, look for his consent. Is he coming to the person or is the person coming to him? And if he wants to move away from the people, let him. Cowboy, sit. That's my finger. That's not a sit. Don't, and try to avoid calling him with your hand targeting. Remember, hand target should just be to reposition him or your emergency recall. I actually use it with your guests. So I would have, that's something else. All these ideas come when I'm filming. So when you guys play hand targeting, you could be sitting here and you could be sitting there and you're having him go to back and forth playing a hand touch. Then when your guest comes over, have them watch a little bit and then have them get in. And if he chooses not to touch their hand, he's telling you, I don't feel comfortable enough with them. Now remember, for dogs, if I'm sitting or laying down and I'm pointed at the person, it has my full attention, does not have my full trust yet. When I start to feel trusting, I'm going to start seeing more on my side or my back or rubbing, seeing me put my belly up. So again, look for those indicators that say that he's comfortable. You just made your mom happy. Sit. That's not a sit still. Sit. And last little thing, motorcycle just went by. So have some treats with you, and just every time a sound happens, give a treat afterwards. So every time a door slams, every time I hear a kid screaming, motorcycle. Thank you. So now we just take all these things out, and the quality of life for him will be so much better because he's not stressed. I think that stress is probably amplified and but contributing greatly to a lot of your problems. All right, this is my buddy Cowboy, and this is Cowboy's Roadmap to Success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.